Yo, 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 what is going on? RoK Familia and some COD Familia if you guys want to check this out. But for the RoK Fam out there, yes, if you're watching this, it's true. Jumping is going to be removed, deleted, sayonara, deuces, baby, because it is going to be out of this game on March 26th. As of recording this on the 22nd, that is 4 days from now. Now, this is for the beginner's immigration item. I'm going to tell you what I think about this. Is this actually as serious as some people are making it out to be? Is it not really that serious? I am someone who has done a number of jumper projects and some of the largest jumper projects in Rise of Kingdoms history, in Infinity Kingdom history, and for Call of Dragons history across 3 different games and 9 projects that I've done. This is something I believe in. And it's not just about doing projects back to back. It's about why are you doing a project and what are you trying to get out of it? What is the benefit? Are you trying to create a better day-to-day experience for players because of what you can create in a kingdom from jumping? Or is it just less than that? So I'm going to share with you my thoughts on all of this. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up, because it helps out a lot. Thanks. So we know this is being removed. Let's hear what some prominent jumper community discords have to say about this. Number 1, coming up from Z-Man. Who's now the owner, took this over from Raya, shout out to the OG, for the jumper community. I think they have over like 5,000 or 6,000 people over here. And so they say, as most of you now know, Lilith has decided to remove the beginner's migration item from the game. This effectively removes jumping from the game. I mean, that is accurate. The staff has discussed the situation, and an overwhelming majority believe that this server should continue on in some shape or form. I agree too as well. I think that the server should. I actually don't think you really need to change that much. And we'll maybe talk about that in a moment. What we are less sure about is exactly how exactly that should happen. In an effort, they're collecting feedback. For the time being, they're kind of like suspending indefinite project promotions, etc. Another prominent jumper community Discord, which is the JC community, I think they have a couple thousand members there. Rise of Kingdoms has decided to remove the jumper system, and we all know this is a bad decision, especially for free-to-play players. So click on the link below and vote with the green arrow to cancel this decision. Now, let's see what some of your fellow Discord mates think about all this. So I have to figure out how I'm gonna maybe we'll like do this. I'll hang out in the middle, right? If that's okay. So maybe this will work slightly. So starting off, right, we're looking at like some people that had made some comments about this, right? So hey, is it true, right, that they're going to be taking out the feature being able to jump other servers? Yes. No jumping is removed on the 26th. We have which jump? I jump a June. You can still jump. Don't worry. Has jumping removed for good? I jump because he looked like a Ravager noob and they're protecting me. Wait, what? Oh, I just knew jumping is gone. Good luck with jumping. They don't know that from March 26th, they won't be able to jump anymore. Right, still join. My jump starts as soon as 81 opens. Why not make a new account with the jump or something? Because what before could save up to jump to CH16, 17. Thought content creators would have jumped on this. I know, right? That's actually a solid point. I think the only person who's touched on this so far is Omni. This is like such a massive thing because jumping has been such an integral part of the community. It is effectively its own ecosystem at this point. And so it will jump to starter kingdom as soon as it opens. Let's read a few more here. Right, so my creating plan a year in advance. I've seen so many projects just dissolve before they actually jump. Honestly, the banning of jumping isn't even that bad. Last fire sale of the game, the one that missed a jump. We have a jump project starting. Let's see here. Pooh, you telling me the kingdom I do jump is most likely to have other jump groups longer than 5 days. So I got time to create an account on newer server and jump. Want to join our jumper? Jumping's still a thing. Let me see. Who trying to jump 2 years later? To speed ups. They bounce. I mean, they want balance and they remove jumping. Okay, we understand. But what we get in return, it's actually insane because free-to-play will have no damn chance to compete. At least when we were doing jumpers, we had a chance to compete in the first few days. I mean, to be fair, free-to-play never really had a chance. Let's like really put things into perspective because I just think that's such a misleading stretch that it is hysterical. And that's not directed at this individual, but it's directed more at the general population. You have to understand that even if someone participates the same amount of time as you do, and contributes the same amount of time, invests the same amount of time, even if they light spend, they'll eventually be able to surpass you. So again, this isn't just about like mid and high spenders, and again, you have to understand that there's such a wide margin between being a T5, a T4, even sometimes a T3, early on in the game when free-to-plays are, especially when you're talking about like the first few weeks or the early stages of season 1, where, you know, you're probably T2 waiting to get T3, T1 waiting to get T2, right? So it's to say that you have a chance, you also have to define what you mean by a chance. Because if we're talking about you have a chance to make a PvP impact in season 1 by being able to defend, by being able to address rogues, by being able to have some kind of cachet in the kingdom, where you can act as a deterrent along with other free to play. I mean, it's just it's more likely that's never has ever been the case. So just to put that into perspective, doesn't mean that maybe you don't have some outliers here, right? Maybe you get a kingdom that barely has any spenders and the free to player is running ravaging. I mean, that probably would be a blessing to them, right? But haven't seen a single video. Again, Omni did a video. Again, you'd have to look at the media chat to see that. So them stopping jumping is them supporting it. Jumping was never a feature. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't like they said that. It wasn't like they came out and said, "Oh, hey, you can do." At least from what I remember, that I never saw them say something where they said, "Hey, you can do this with the beginner immigration item. Everyone hop on this idea." No, it was like people figured it out, and then it just kind of started catching and, you know, kind of rolling, if you will. So it was never really something that the game itself promoted, if that's what this person means. As an odd spender, I feel like jumping is kind of a necessity. It's the only way in the early game I can keep up with others if I want to save a good amount of speeds and RSS for KVK1. Keep in mind, you're really only saving a little bit depending on the amount of time that you're spending with your jump right in your prep kingdom before you go to your final. Jumping has become such a core aspect of the game, and almost every single kingdom had jumpers going to it. When they jump, I'm saying jumping help free-to-play stay in main alliances longer. I mean, to an extent, it just depends. To be honest, it really depends on how many... it depends on the thought and the approach perspective for the leaders that are leading those alliances early on in season 1. Are they heavily recruiting spenders or top players sooner rather than later in season 1? If so, there's always the chance that free-to-play might get pushed out sooner. Now, if they're not, and you're doing more of a balanced power approach, whether that's everyone's come together because you're in a project that's approaching it that way, or the leaders have reached out to one another, if you're in a kingdom that doesn't have any projects in, and then by some miracle of God, you have everyone that says, oh yeah, let's apply this structure so that way free-to-play can stay in more main alliances for a lot longer, then yeah, you probably have a better chance of doing so. But typically, most kingdoms will usually fall victim to the ladder climbing effect, which is basically where players want, and not everyone, but some players will effectively try to keep climbing the ladder, going from number 5, number 4, number 3, and trying to get to a number 1 alliance. Why is this? Because they want to be in very active alliances, and also usually the top alliances on average have more spenders, and so they'll be able to reap some benefits there from rewards and chests. Logic commented yesterday, well, all my sleeper strategy and 0 to 1.5 million stuff is still valid. I had stopped jumping when the threat of missing kingdoms was used. And again, I'm not 100% sure on exactly what the strategy here is, because again, I don't know if this is something new, if it's something that I'm familiar with, but it's just been rebranded to have a different name. Because there was once a point in time where you were able to effectively like quad jump, essentially, where you could do your first 2 jumps, you could do something else, and then you could migrate with actual migration passports to the kingdom, which effectively was like quad jumping. So you could farm 3 kingdom types and then get the 4th kingdom type by the time you went there. So like I said, and there's some other things that I remember doing back then, but again, I don't know if this is just a rebranded thing. I'd have to like hear exactly what this is to understand. Before, the difference was, did they actually manage to do a jump or not? But now, if anything, new players will be much easier to manage than those morons I've been throwing information at for the past few years. Jeez. Jumpers are scum to new players. That's just a fact. The entire point of jumping is to have an advantage over new players. Not really. Like, that's not really the entire point of it. Even if some players may say that, at its core, that's not really what it is. The whole idea really of jumping is just for you to go in with a boosted account so you can be stronger than new players that are starting. But that's different than saying that you are trying to have an advantage over like all new players so you can enact or utilize or take advantage of said advantage, right? And maybe that's not exactly what Diablo is saying here, but I just wanted to like clarify or answer that from another angle, is that the whole idea really of jumping began because when you could use the beginner immigration item back in the day, right? For me, I started playing in beta, or I guess like closer to beta ending, but back when it was still Rise of Civilizations and before Kingdom 100 came out. And I spent my time in 1196 for where my main activity was, after I had kind of gone through some trial and error testing. And this was in that kingdom, they eventually made their way to be an Imperium, I think for about a year and a half, 2 years, right? They were a top 4 kingdom of the game. And this was back with like Legends Gaming, right? The OG. So shout out to the fan back then. And at the time, you would basically do this and you could either do it individually or you could do it with a group. And that's kind of where projects and groups started to become a lot more prominent as they were gaining more traction then. And so again, it depends on like what your vision of it is. I don't look at it as something negative per se, or something that is to bully or to take advantage of new players. I look at it as people want to start off just at a stronger power level so they can get to what they need to get to that much faster, which is more of them worrying about themselves and not necessarily other players, whether they be new or other jumpers. So next one here, right, is, yeah, but they will know as soon as people start migrating in and being better than them, they'll be confronted with the knowledge and can just pay the $5 to migrate. Like, what are you talking about with jumping? They don't know until like day 15 when they start to become aware of the leaderboards and territory and stuff. And then they are confronted with the only way to catch jumpers is to spend more than them or start over and copy them. And keep in mind, we could really get into like a lot of jumping psychology here. But what I will simply say is that this mindset, at least from what Diablo's mentioning, is not necessarily wrong. It really depends on how you as a project are planning to set up in a kingdom, and how much education are you willing to provide to the general population. And what I mean by this very simply is you could have some projects that just want to go in and it's mine, 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 mine. They'll grab everything. They want the best of the best stuff, shrines, altars, etc. And then you might have other projects like mine, for example, for anyone who's ever been a part of a project that I've done before, and maybe others if you've seen this done. But my approach when I did a project and we went into a kingdom was never about taking everything. It was about building a system that could allow the most amount of alliances to make it from zone 1 to zone 2 and then eventually zone 3. And obviously, you're not going to be able to fit everyone in to a zone 2 and everyone into a zone 3. But really what it came down to was how can we consolidate, retain, and have a low percentage and amount of player drop off so we could have the highest amount of active players playing where everyone felt like they were able to get a piece of the pie, right? Based on who was breaking out. Because again, you're not going to have 100 alliances. You are going to have to consolidate. But that doesn't mean that you need to just kill off a large player base within that kingdom. And this is one of the things that a lot of jumping projects just do not do. They don't take the time to do. And so we would take time to educate and reach out to other leaders in alliances early on. And I'm talking like day 1, day 2, day 3 early. We'd reach out to players. We'd educate and introduce ourselves and say what we're kind of here to do. And an example of this would be doing something like splitting up a zone 1 into like 3 or 4 different sections, right? And then you basically say, well, hey, you can have one main alliance that can have that, but other alliances can still exist. But we want to try to encourage people to join these alliances so that way they'll have the highest percentage chance of being able to progress and continue playing from one zone to the next in order to advance and just enjoy what season 1 is, right? Because the fact is you may not be able to have every single player enjoy the story, the process, the progression, the campaign, if you will, from a zone 1 to a zone 3 in a season 1/home kingdom. And so again, I don't want to go too far deep in here. I could expand on this a lot more, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an example on kind of like the two hardcore sides of Tailends on what you can do. And it really just kind of comes down to what the philosophy is and what that founder or project lead or leaders want to implement once they get there to said kingdom. So I think I'll probably end it there. Again, there's a lot more that we can look at. I will just simply end and say this. To me, I don't really think this is a big deal. It doesn't affect jumping, which really is, if we extend it beyond what the whole jumping term is, really what you're doing is doing a project. You're doing a group project. And even though you can't have people boost accounts, you can still have everyone start in a kingdom on day one. So the whole idea of jumping / doing a project or doing a group with a lot of players, nothing's changed. You can still do all that. You can still build a kingdom potentially in the image that you want and or anything in between. So that hasn't changed. So I think anyone that's like really making this out to be bigger than it is, I think you have to really put things into perspective. Yes, you do lose out on being able to go into a kingdom with boosted accounts or stronger accounts than people starting day one. But that's the only thing you really lose out on. Now, yeah, you could maybe make some arguments for other things that you lose out on in the beginning by being able to go in there with stronger accounts. Sometimes that can factor into early territory that you could take over, being able to act as a deterrent maybe against other starting alliances. So maybe you can get territory first before others. Maybe you can get shrines and other things before others. Maybe you can disconnect territory so you can get these things before others, maybe get to passes because you're stronger than them on average when you come in. Yes, we could, and there's other things we could touch on. That is a very simplified example. But when we're talking about the overall grand scheme of things, I mean, again, if you have an organized body and you're going in there with like 200, 300, 400 players, you still have a lot of advantages. Even if you go in there with one alliance worth of a group, you still have advantages. So like I said, to me, I don't see this as being the end of the world. I can understand for people that are in it right now in the moment, it probably feels like a huge slap in the face. But like I said, for me, I'm like 50-50 on it. You know, it's like if they keep it, cool. If they take it out, okay, fine. It just, I don't know. I don't really lean one way or the other. But I just want to simply say that from someone who's experienced doing jumping projects when jumping was a thing in Kingdom Builders and also doing it in games that do not have jumping at all, it's just not that big a deal. It just isn't. I never saw any major problems, especially once it's out. People are still doing it, and we still did it in Infinity Kingdom, and people are still doing it in Call of Dragons. So I'd love to hear what you guys think, right? These are just my opinions, my thoughts from, again, playing the game for a couple years, doing a lot of projects, knowing some people here that were in my projects that I see people posting on, and people that are doing their own projects. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. That's it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.